Hi, everyone. I know folks are still trickling in, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Katie Capuzzo, Director of Community at WISE, and together we're a global community dedicated to empowering the next generation of women in sales. Huge thanks to Ashby for sponsoring today's event, and we're going to hear from three of their incredible teammates in just a few minutes. I'm really excited for the conversation today. We're going to discuss the importance of team collaboration and strategies for working cross-functionally that ultimately lead to more closed deals, which is what we all are looking to do, especially this time of year. So joining me in that conversation, we have Leigh Brown, Head of EMEA Sales, Jessica Broderick, Global Head of Solutions Engineering, and Alex Gelinas, hopefully I pronounced it correctly, Head of Contract Management. So Leigh, I'll hand it over to you first to tell us a bit more about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So like Katie said, I head up our EMEA sales team at Ashby, which right now includes our three segments. So our startup or small business team, our mid-market team, and our enterprise team. And I've got 5 managers that roll up to me here before Ashby. So I joined in middle of June. So only a few months in. I think actually yesterday was my 90-day mark. And before Ashby, I was at HubSpot for almost 13 years and was on a number of different teams over there. Actually worked really closely with Alex at HubSpot, collaborating on some customer growth team over there. I just moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, from Boston. I was there my whole life. So we just moved a few weeks ago, and I'm currently sitting in a ballroom at our country club because our internet got cut while they were installing a fence at our new house. And so apologies if you see any fog machines there setting up for the Harry Potter night tomorrow night, but I think it should be fairly quiet in the background, hopefully, but apologies in advance.
You're
Um,
making us all jealous. I think we would love to have a Harry Potter night. So
yeah.
enjoy for all of us.
Yeah.
All
Um,
right, Jess, you want to take it away next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Broderick. I'm the Global Head of Solutions at Ashby. Ironically, Leigh and I keep doing our intros together because she's 90 days in and I am 60 days in. So still a little bit fresh, but not fresh to solutions engineering. I have about a decade of experience across EX and Asana in being an IC and leading solutions engineering teams. And I am way too passionate about solutions engineering as a profession as well. So feel free to ask me anything, but excited to be with my female colleagues today and on this panel.
Excited to have you here. Alex,
Yeah, I'll round it out. I'm Alex Gelinas. I head up our contract management function here at Ashby. So it's contract and renewal management. I'm based in Rhode Island. I'm going right for that because that's one of my favorite things to talk about. But so if you ever need to know anything more about our smallest state, the Ocean State, I'm here for all of your trivia questions. But more back to Ashby. But I have been at Ashby for just about 2.5 years now. So I was brought on to kind of initiate our contract renewal management function. Before that, I spent 7 years at HubSpot doing the same. To Lee's point, collaborated quite closely with customer success and sales throughout that time, and had my start originally more so in on the sales side. So I've kind of dabbled in both, and really enjoy kind of bringing all of these organizations together for the success of our customers. Also, we do have some really nice Ashby swag, and this bucket heart hat is like really a part of me. So thanks for letting it join today with us in this chat.
the reveal of the bucket hat when we were in a prep call before this was amazing. So I'm so glad everyone's getting to witness that. Please, throughout the call, y'all drop in where you're tuning from in the chat, +1 what our teammates are saying here, and also ask questions there. And then there's also a box at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A if you'd rather drop your questions in there. We'll get to that during the last 10 minutes or so of the conversation. So let's go ahead and jump in. This question is for all of you, and Leigh, we'll start with you. With Ashby's fully remote workforce, how has the company built a culture of collaboration that still feels connected and aligned?
Well, very timely question, actually. We didn't feed this to you, I don't think, Katie, or maybe Alex ingested in your prep, but we have our company offsite coming up in the first week in October. So this will be mine and Jess's first time there, but we take a full week for the first week in October every single year to bring the entire company together. in Cancun. I don't know if I mentioned that, which is thrilling and exciting. And I think we do, from what I can tell on the schedule and from what I've heard from others, and maybe Alex can speak more directly to this because she was actually there last year. But I think we do a good job balancing sessions that would be really impactful for when you're getting together with people in person, but also like a good fair bit of free time. And Alex and I are secretly, I see Carrie's here. I don't know who else is here from Ashby, but we are working currently on a fun scavenger hunt. So trying to balance like some sessions and actual learnings and collaboration with different teams, but also just having space and time to make connections with people who you might not be able to, generally speaking, or just have more time to have conversations. I feel like in Zoom, you're very time boxed, obviously, and spend a lot of time just focusing on the agenda and what needs to happen in that particular meeting. But a little bit of free time, I think, is really helpful when you're making connections and memories and collaborating with folks. And Carrie will be on my team winning. Oh, there's Steph-ish. Steph will be on my team too.
I love it. Yeah, very timely. No one fed me that info, but I'm glad that it worked out into this. So October, time to connect. And I love that you do that every year. Every October, that's time that y'all are going to be out of office doing it. So enjoy that. That's good to know. What about you, Jess? Anything to add? I know you're just 60 days in, but what have you picked up on so far?
I think that Ashby is actually really intentional about getting people together in the right moments in time. So even though I've only been here for 60 days, I have actually met both Leigh and Alex in person in two different settings. So Leigh and I were at our sales leadership offsite, and then Alex and I got to celebrate in Times Square when we made our Series D announcement. Where they just got all of the people who were on the East Coast together to take pictures with the billboard and have lunch. So I do think that we try to create these microcosms of people who are together in the same areas and bringing them into co-working spaces so that way they can spend time and get to know each other. But I think even in a remote setting, we all do a really good job at just, yeah, getting to know everyone. I actually talked to somebody on Alex's team today, Shiv, through our virtual donut get to know each other, where it just, yeah, goes around on a weekly basis and assigns you to a couple random people across Ashby who you get the opportunity to talk with. So even though I am fully remote, I feel like I'm going into Cancun knowing a decent amount of people for, the 60 days of my tenure.
Great. And Alex, I mean, bucket hats are obviously part of the deal, but what else?
Yeah, it's definitely part of the deal. I mean, echoing everything that Leigh and Jess have said so far, right? There's also, it's outside of some of those like in-person meetups that we have, or to Jess's point, like the donut chats, kind of a way to meet other folks from other teams, other parts of the company. We have pretty vibrant like social and also our like Ashby Love Slack channels internally. Like there are ways outside of just like your day-to-day collaboration in your role that you're in. You also have an opportunity to have a lot of fun. I remember one person getting started at Ashby was like, didn't realize how many comedians there were within the company. We do have a good time, and you also find folks that have like similar to interest to you. So it makes it more meaningful too when you do hop into almost like a workplace meeting and you're like, oh yeah, of course, Jess. Like I remember that we have this very funny thing in common, which now I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Sorry, Jess, but I'm sure there's like a list of things that we have in common that are hilarious. But but in short, like it makes it much more meaningful to like have those times, and especially with our Ashby Love channel that we have, we really just have a really strong fandom from our customers, but also from internally. So it's a really positive and joyful place to be sharing those feedback pieces from customers. Also, like shouting out colleagues internally. It just really has provided a really supportive and enjoyable work environment.
Just to double click on that in the social channel, I just want to, that's a really important point because I feel like when you're fully remote, there's less times to like catch people in the right is like what we used to call it at HubSpot a lot. Because you're on computers, obviously. And so you're only like one-on-oneing or one-on-one to a few people. But that social channel, or sorry, the Ashby Loves channel is a great way. Like we just had a rep on our team get called out from doing something amazing during a customer event that I would never have heard about because I wasn't there. And the social channel is like out of control. It's great. Like Alex is usually in there posting about some ridiculously amazing seafood meal that she made. She's not kidding when she says she's like a ambassador to Rhode Island. She makes them, yeah. Rhode Island is a lovely place to live, Alex, but Alex makes it look like it's like in the Caribbean.
I want to be added
It's
to
here
that
for you.
panel.
It's here waiting for you.
I've
That's
been,
amazing.
Alex. I moved away from New England. Remember, I'm down here.
That's great to hear. And I guess I'm curious because sometimes, whether you're fully remote or you're in office, these extras like the donut channel, donut love meetings, whatever y'all just called them, and these hype up channels can feel more like an obligation. And I think that they can feel stale after a while. So, how does Ashby keep that fresh or even like find people as a culture on the team that are going to like that and encourage each other and kind of stay true to y'all's values versus have that obligation mentality?
I'm happy to check. Oh no, go ahead, Jess. After you.
I was just going to say that it's honestly very natural. And I think it comes along with the personas that we hire. Like our all hands chat is lit. Like people laugh the whole time. It's actually hard to focus on the content because the chat is just like going with people making jokes and comments and things like that. So I do think it's a lot of the DNA that's inside of Ashby, where I don't feel the need to go into that channel, but I do because I want to celebrate others and read about others who are being celebrated.
I love that. This seems like a good place to plug that Ashby is hiring since we just talked a lot about fun things going on. We are going to get into some tactical strategies here, but Leigh or anyone else on the team, do y'all have specific role shout outs that you want to make right now?
I'll make one for our enterprise sales team specifically. We're still waiting. Alex and Jess haven't gotten our headcount for next year just yet, like we will in the next couple weeks. The team that we are actively hiring for right now is our enterprise sales team. I'd love some more women on that team. Carrie is here. I saw her in the chat on that team. And then we will have a lot of roles opening up in Q1. So I would say we're hiring for all of our segments, but especially right now with enterprise. And I think Steph can chime in on the chat if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure if you start before October 6th, you can come to Cancun. So no pressure. There's like 2 weeks, but
And you said it in a live webinar, if not, so it's
yeah.
going to have to ring true. So I love it.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm pretty sure. You can
accurate.
have your first day be in Cancun. There is someone, one of our sales recruiters is starting in Cancun.
I love that. Yeah, Stephanie just dropped in the chat. All of the roles are on our Wise job board, so I'll drop that link in just a minute. But speaking of your team, Leigh, you lead a team of account executives and you're working really quickly to move deals through the pipeline, of course. How often are they looping in other departments to close a deal? And then what advice do you have for those with striking a balance between pushing for what an AE needs and then maintaining strong relationships with other functions that also have things that are important?
Yeah. Speaking to how often they're bringing in others into their deals, I think it depends on the segment, obviously, and deal size, and it's probably pretty closely correlated. So on the enterprise team, they obviously are working on almost every single deal with someone from Jess's team on solution engineering. And then for customers, they might be working really closely with the contract manager on Alex's team. I think the larger the deal, the larger your deal team typically is. I think one thing that's nice about Ashby and our growth, or I should say our size right now, is we're a pretty flat organization. So product questions, like you can pretty quickly find like the PM. You can Slack Benji, our CEO, who also heads up our product team, if you've got product questions or feedback. Like we're all very accessible. So I think even more so than previous roles I've seen. So I'd say like deal team is relative to deal size, but at the same time, everyone's like very accessible at Ashby to do what it takes to get a deal done. I think in terms of striking the balance, I think one of the things that keeps me up at night as a sales leader is thinking about like how sales can be very needy, where like we are the ones that need help and are like pulling in business partners, and there's fewer opportunities perhaps to like give back to other teams or help other teams with their roles. And so I think about that pretty consistently, and like how we can have our reps ensure that they have like the situational awareness to realize like they're asking a lot of times. It drives me nuts when I see requests be like unreasonably time bound, like I need this now, like because deals are typically very personal to a sales rep and you're very emotionally tied to it. This is literally how you are making money, and it's your success, and your identity is a lot of times like tied to that success, reasonably or not is a different question. And so I think losing the context of like timing or maybe why you're making certain requests can be very can create a lot of friction. And I think just being like very aware of when you're asking for like timely requests, like this has to be done by the end of the day. Like, but why? Does it have to be done by the end of the day because it's going to make you feel better? Or like, what's the context behind that? Is this like something that's coming from the customer? Is this just for you? And kind of just being aware of like the concept of debits and credits, and almost like if I'm going to go to Alex and say, Alex, like I have this customer, they're renewing and like we have to get them an order form by the end of the day tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to do that every single day. Like Alex is going to know that, like how many times I've come to her asking her for an immediate turnaround on something. So it's not to say you can't have something be time bound or something be very like have a fast turnaround, but that can't be for every single deal all the time. So just having that awareness, I think, is important. But I mean, I'll also let Alex and Jess chime in because my team's the one that's usually like, I need you.
I actually think that the sales team at Ashby is highly capable, which is something different from sales teams that I've worked with before. But they bring solutions engineers into their deals to have that technical counterpart that lends trust and credibility. But it's not because they're not product experts. They do really understand Ashby and the space that we're in. So I honestly think that it works really nicely because everyone's well respected in the sales cycle, and it's not just somebody doing something for somebody else. We have a specific purpose, and we're coming in there to be that technical advisor or trusted resource to the customer in addition to the salesperson.
Yeah, and even internally, we have a number of public channels to provide the right help when it's needed. So I think that has helped, or it ensures that it's not getting too urgent, or you have different individuals who have, varying availability who can chime in on different questions that are maybe time sensitive. So, whether it's customer success or contract management, helping move something forward for the customer and the sales rep, helping move forward a deal, helping move forward an upsell, right? The customer might want it urgently as well. So to Leigh's point, asking why, making sure that we're all aligned and all on the same page, but we all do have the same goals, which I think comes up kind of later in our chat. But that's, I think, how we're able to kind of make it quite seamless. To Jess's point, it is a very strong relationship and a lot of like mutual understanding of what is important to each team.
I think that self-reflection of why am I asking for this or why am I feeling panicked about this thing is something we all probably should do in our day to day. I'm taking a lesson in that as well. So thanks for sharing that. Jessica, you just talked about building trust and credibility from a solutions engineering point of view, but to take that in your role, since you are 60 days into this role, how have you approached building that trust and credibility with your direct reports as well as the organization being newer on the team?
Yeah, so I actually have a little bit of a unique perspective because I came into Ashby on a team that had just been hired right before I joined. So I have 4 new people who are onboarding on my team at the same time. And then I have, 2 seasoned veterans as well. And I think that it's just a delicate balance. I love to take a step back when I come into an organization and just listen and learn to understand the way that we do things. To Leigh's point, like, why are we doing things this way? What's the method to the madness, to just really try to understand like the value that we have internally, the value that we have to our customers, and what role are we ultimately playing. And then after that, I try to see like where are there areas or opportunities for improvement in that. Nothing was broken, nothing was on fire, but Ashby is growing at a significant rate. And me and Leigh talk about this all the time. Like, we've got to build for scale. So some of the processes and things that we have in place right now, they were great when Ashby was a little bit smaller, but as we get bigger, we need to modify them. So to build trust with the people on my team, I really take their feedback and considerations when I'm doing something, right? I'm not just in here like, oh, I'm going to change this or I'm going to change that. It's tell me about the pain that you have in this existing process today. Like, what are your opinions on how we can make it better? And using that in my decision-making process for what gets prioritized when and how I go about doing it. And we're all in sales in some capacity. So I feel like you got to sell it to them. Like, what are we doing? What is the reason that we're doing this? What's in it for my team? What's in it for the people that we work with? How does it kind of benefit everybody? And that justifies the why we should be doing this. So I think it's really bringing people along in the journey and building that trust with them along the way, that I have their best interest at heart and I am doing things to make their lives simpler and better in the long run. So that's how I think about building trust on the team.
You joining as a new employee and then having 4 new employees also onboarding is a lot at once.
Yeah. I was just doing my 60-day reviews with others who were just hitting their
Yeah.
60-day mark. So it's definitely been an interesting dynamic, but I think hiring at Ashby is, a big part of who we are. So I am very thankful to the previous leader of solutions engineering for hiring such amazing people and then being able to step in and see them the rest of the way through their journey.
And I believe, Leigh, you mentioned in our conversation that Ashby is very good at documenting processes and how to do things so that onboarding, you always have something to reference.
You couldn't help yourself, Leigh, could you?
Okay, we're all laughing because it's like ridiculous. It's like very true. It's not like this was like told to me during the interview process, and then you come and you show up and you have like literally everything is documented. And then you're told during all hands and your first all hands when you're introducing what's the most surprising thing at Ashby you've learned. We are told explicitly by Abik and Benji, our founders, that you're not allowed to say documentation is the surprising thing. So yes, like we're all laughing because I somehow found a way to like weave that in, I guess, to our conversation. But yes, documentation is one of our strengths.
I feel like that's a little bit of a behind the scenes anecdote, but all of you have the same reaction, so it must be true.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
that. Alex, contract management is still a relatively new function in SaaS. I actually didn't know that it was sort of this growing thing that's happening. And so it was really interesting to hear more from you of how it's developed and how you view it. So to kind of let everyone else in on that, what do you think why do you think it's important to establish this role early? And then how do you think it strengthens the revenue engine at Ashby?
Yeah, absolutely. And just for a little like historical context, where I had come from HubSpot was on like the founding team of renewal management at HubSpot, and it was established about 10 years into HubSpot being a business, which I think, and like the director who had come on to kind of build that program out had done the same thing at Salesforce. So again, thinking about it, this was back in 2016. So right now we're like almost 10 years ahead. And Kelsey and I had worked together at HubSpot. Kelsey's our VP of customer success. And I think she was just maybe, I think we joke, she was maybe 2 days into Ashby. It's really difficult because sales doesn't always want to be owning renewals completely, right? And as a business, you want that team focusing on new revenue and upsell opportunities. It can be a lot cumbersome for them to be focusing on kind of the nitty gritty of procurement processes, negotiating, understanding how to connect the dots of what their either pain points are or what their strengths are, and then aligning them to the right teams within the business. And then on the flip side, customer success managers, right? You want them to be really strong relationship builders. You want them focusing on adoption and the right strategies for these customers to like be really sticky in the product and grow with the business. So it kind of leaves this function of like, who will own the renewals? Who will own these contract conversations that sometimes no one really wants to own? So we kind of come in contract and renewal management, and you take that on, but when you apply a specific individual, a specific team and organization to it, then you can build strategies around what makes it, I think, a really, really special and important role to a business. So kind of going back to what I was saying about Kelsey just a couple days in, right? I think I was employee 65 or 70 at Ashby, which is very, very young for a SaaS business to introduce a specialized role like this. But Kelsey recognized, I know this works, I know how it works, and I know why it works. Because one thing that we're doing is we build trust with these internal teams. We make sure that the sales team and the customer success teams know that we have the best, like what's the best interest for the customer as well as Ashby in mind. And we kind of strike this delicate balance of making sure that that's our priority in every retention conversation or existing customer conversation we're having. And we also, I think there's probably other things. So I don't need to, I could go on and on about this, Katie. I could really go on and on about it, but I really think the focus is like allowing those teams to do what they do best. And you have this contract renewal management function. And by the way, we go by contract management because we handle contract questions throughout the entirety of like a customer's life cycle within Ashby. Renewal manager, right, is a lot of times focused solely on renewal. And so for us, we felt that contract manager was a bit more of an approachable title. And HubSpot had adopted that as well during that time. So we kind of brought that over to Ashby, but that's where that comes from. But while renewals are a big focus to make sure, right, we're making a smooth transition for these customers of ours into their next term, it's also about managing those relationships internally and making sure that we're working towards that successful goal of each organization.
I'm so glad you said approachable title, because when I think of contracts, that is not the word that comes to mind, but you seem very approachable. And even in our conversation, you shared how you want people to be able to come with you to ask questions and comment on your bucket hat and all of the things. So, what do you bring to that department, and why do you think it's important to be approachable when you're in something so specific as contract management?
Yeah, it's funny. I was even just saying, I said to someone in a meeting this week, I was like, our team is deeply unserious and yet extremely serious. Like you have to like enjoy it. You have to have a positive spin on it because negotiation conversations can be challenging. You can get into like tense situations where you have to like be able to bring the conversation down and calm it down. It's almost like how when you see a comedian in like a movie transition to a serious role, and it's because they can like bring themselves down to that level. So I think in terms of not taking yourself too seriously as a contract manager and bringing some levity to it, we tend to see a lot of folks who are like, I'm very like I'm good at sales, but I don't love sales. But I also sometimes feel like maybe I belong as in customer success as a customer success manager. And those are people who are like perfect for this role because it really is tying together strengths of a sales team and strengths of a customer success manager and bringing it into this one beautiful contract renewal manager role. I remember when I'm meeting Jess in person in New York City, we were chatting and laughing. And then I think I was like, oh, and by the way, like, well, I'm sure we'll interact at some point because I like lead our contract management function. And she was like, you seem way too fun to be doing contracts work.
What a compliment.
Yeah, I was sorry. I didn't mean to put myself on a pedestal here, but it really is like it's just I think a characteristic that we look forward to when
Yeah.
we're hiring. You have to make sure that someone is going to be able to communicate well with all different types of personas within the business, and then also be able to turn it on for customers, whoever they're speaking to, whether it's a procurement manager, a recruiter, a head of talent. If someone's frustrated, if someone's happy, you have to be able to kind of shift very quickly and know how to communicate with human beings essentially and be able to match them where they're at.
Mm-hmm. So for anyone on the call who's like, I've liked sales and customer success, as you mentioned, consider contract management. That may be the sweet spot for you.
Yeah. If you don't like getting like texts in the night from like your prospects, come to contract management. If you don't like maybe sometimes having to really like spend a lot of time schmoozing a customer on a call
Oh, I
because
was
it's a
going to say
relationship building
prospecting,
time.
Alex. All you have to say is prospecting. If you don't like
Oh, okay.
prospecting,
If you don't like prospecting, come on down.
I love it. Leigh, you're a big advocate for the trust triangle. What is that? And then why is it beneficial when working cross-functionally in your mind?
sure. So I want to be extremely clear. This is not my concept or idea. I'm nowhere smart enough to have come up with this, but we had Frances Frey, who she's a Harvard Business School professor. She's written a number of books. One of which is I think it's Move Quickly and Break Things, or Move Fast and Break Things. And so she acts as a consultant actually, who comes into businesses like Uber, I want to say Yext maybe, but maybe not just. Anyway, she comes in, kind of like evaluates and figures out how to get a lot of companies back on track as it pertains to like their culture and kind of what's going on internally. And so she came and did a speaking engagement with our HubSpot executive team actually almost a year ago in October. And we did a whole session with her on this concept of the trust triangle. So this is her wording and concept, not mine. But the trust triangle is made up of the 3 points of authenticity, logic, and empathy. So essentially the concept is like everyone has a natural, she calls it a wobble on one of those three. And your wobble can also change with time or situation. So most of the time, if there's a breaking or your trust is degrading in some way, you can kind of point back to like, is it because you feel as though this person or this company or this team is not showing up in a authentic way? like you're kind of like reading between the lines or on your back feet, being like, is this really how this person feels? Or are they like truly being their authentic self or the authenticity of the company? Logic is pretty self-explanatory, where it is just essentially like, I don't want to say like how smart you are, but like if what you're explaining is accurate or what people are hearing from you is true. That's logic. And then empathy is pretty straightforward. It's the most common wobble is what she says is your empathy wobble. And the easiest way to fix your empathy and how you're showing up with empathy is typically like losing distractions. So as a remote company is probably will resonate with a lot of people here, but like if you notice you're on one-on-ones constantly with your boss and you can see their eyes like clicking around and they're moving and they're not like actually paying attention to what you're saying, that is an example of like an empathy wobble where you're not going to feel like you have as much trust built up if you know this person's not like being empathetic and listening, essentially. So back to Francis's like triangle, like I usually, if I'm talking to a manager, I'm thinking about how am I building trust with business partners, kind of thinking about those three aspects, like the logic one, just a quick hack that she shared with logic. And this is something I've been thinking about as I'm newer to Ashby and I have sales reps asking me sometimes, they're not this silly to ask me very deep product questions that I have not, like, I don't know the product as well as I will in another 6 months and in a year. And it's not like the product was not my initial like focus in the first like 3 weeks kind of thing to learn. I was focusing on hiring managers. I digress. But logic is something that was very top of mind for me because I just don't have the answers to everything. And so one of Francis's like hacks or ways to focus on logic, if you feel like that's maybe degrading or like a little wobbly, is just getting back to people quickly. And she actually found, I think there was some statistic in here, but 24 hours is kind of like the cutoff. And it resonated with me also as a second line leader because she mentioned like as you move up higher in leadership, you move further and further away from like the day to day. And you're not meant to be an expert on everything, obviously, as a second line leader or a VP or a CEO. And so the importance of like ensuring that you still have sound logic and that people trust your logic is just getting back to people quickly. So Carrie's a rep on my team. She's on here listening to this. So I'm just telling you, Carrie, if Carrie asks me a question, I'll quickly be fine with saying, I'm not sure, but I will be like, my clock starts there where I'm like, I will get her an answer and get back to her like within that 24-hour time frame so that she still feels like she can trust me and that I will find the answer to things. And that's much better, obviously, than providing the wrong answer or trying to like make something up on the fly.
Yeah.
That's the trust triangle.
That's so helpful. I'm just taking a note for myself because I think that a lot of times, especially if we don't know something, if you're a seller, you don't know something on a call, the immediate reaction can be, oh, I know it, and kind of BS your way through an answer when actually I don't know, but I'm going to find out and I'll get back to you within a reasonable time is a really good point.
The other, sorry, if you humor me, obviously I'm passionate about this. The other thing that Francis talks about in like, there's two ways that your logic can wobble. One is that you just don't have good logic, which like that's in her TED talk. She's like, I can't help you with that. Like that's a different topic, but like, if you don't have good logic or you don't know what you're talking about, like whatever. But the second one is the ability to like clearly communicate your logic. And one of the examples, I'm doing like my hand waving because I'm a very visual person. She says she also loves triangles. There's two ways to like communicate. Essentially, you start with a top up triangle, which is like, what's the point? And then give your validating data and story behind it after. Or the inverse of the triangle would be storytelling. And like we all know, and certainly on this call as sellers, like the storytelling way of kind of getting to your point and like bringing people around and then you make your point at the end. Her advice is like, if you have a little bit of a logic wobble and you're not communicating logic as clearly and articulately as you should, flip your triangle and just start with the point and then support the data. She also, I will send, I'm sure you guys can all Google it. I can put it in the chat here, her TED talk. She also like explicitly made the point. She's like, and women out there, if you feel as though you're getting cut off and not able to like make your point or people are stealing your ideas, flip your triangle, make your point first. People can't steal them and then support the data after. So I thought that was an interesting like framework to use.
It's great advice. For me personally, I give a lot of context and I think that that has a time and a place. But if I start with the point, then people can track easier through.
Yeah, you start this way. You're starting this way where you're like,
yes.
Here's all of the context and then my point. So you want to flip it.
Yes, that's great. I guess, Alex and Jess, in the spirit of cross-functional collaboration, some of the things that Leigh just said, do you feel like you've seen that in her as she's shown up in her first 90 days, where that credibility and follow through has come out even in your interactions with her as a teammate?
Me and
Oh my
Alex.
gosh.
Alex and
I was going to
Jess.
say,
They're going to talk
for
about you,
you, Leigh,
Leigh.
I was going to say, absolutely. I feel like Leigh has come in just like hit the ground running. We had the opportunity to see each other in person at one of our like Boston meetups, and I asked Leigh, I'm like, talk to me. What are you working on? What are your priorities? And she pulled out this enormous list that was very organized. It wasn't just like, here's a to-do list that I'm going through, but it was a very intentional and detailed list of all of these different areas. One of our operating principles at Ashby is continuous improvement, and I feel like that is one that we all like embody day in and day out. Um, but that was like all of Leigh's lists. And I'm like, many of them were things that would like positively impact like customer success as a whole, or contract management specifically. And if like Leigh is quick to check in with me in terms of understanding process instead of making an assumption, which is huge, especially for a new leader coming into a business, instead of just making an assumption and asking a little bit more and building that trust. So I already like fortunately had trust with Leigh ahead of her joining Ashby. But it's obviously just been solidified in a very short amount of time, being working together again.
That's great advice for anyone listening that's in a similar situation or wondering how they can kind of create this personal brand for them, not making assumptions, leading with curiosity. That's a great tidbit there as well. And I'll include the trust triangle info in our takeaway email so that everyone can link to that. All right, next question here for Jessica. What's the benefit of involving solutions engineers earlier in deals, and how does that shift outcomes for both sales and customer success downstream? You spoke to this or alluded it to a little bit earlier, but would be curious more in depth on that.
Yeah, I think I mentioned kind of the SE's role as a trusted advisor in the deal cycle. I think I've been beating this drum a lot lately at Ashby again as we are getting bigger and going into the enterprise, but you have to slow down to speed up, which is probably an AE's least favorite thing to hear because they want to be, closing deals quickly and moving on to the next one. But what I find is that if you introduce an SE early, they can obviously like help build that trust and credibility within the sales cycle, but we can also identify the customer's pain. So like bringing it back to the customer at the center of everything that we do and give them a better experience working with Ashby in pre-sales to tee up post-sales for, a successful implementation or ongoing success and management. I think sometimes we want to rush through and just jump into a bunch of demonstrations and kind of, some people at Ashby have started calling it the vortex of despair, where like we're showing product and we don't even know why we're showing product. And in order to avoid that, you have to have a really solid understanding of the customer's pain points, and more importantly, how, Ashby can help solve those pain points. And I think that comes from just doing a lot of discovery and having that like technical lens on, okay, I see that you're having this pain point with your existing ATS. Like, tell me more about that. Like, what does your ideal process look like? And how can we design that for you, agnostic of tool? And just being really in tune with the customer's needs instead of kind of selling. So build trust and the relationship with the customer first up front, and we can carry that through the entire sales cycle. So at the end of the day, yes, we had to kind of maybe add an extra meeting into the flow and take more of their time, and some would say potentially pepper them with questions, but like the value that they get out of that and us having that understanding definitely shines through in their entire experience with Ashby as somebody who truly knows what they're trying to solve for, has shown them the solution to their problems, and then can ultimately deliver on that through implementation and beyond. So I think that is like the ideal scenario of why you should involve SEs early in your opportunity. And again, like we just want to partner with AEs at the end of the day. Like when I think about the SEs customer, yes, it's absolutely our customers, but it's also the sales team that we work with. So talking through strategy for deals and how they all look a little bit different and your approach isn't going to be the same each time, you can really gain a lot from having that relationship established early and just using it to bounce ideas off of one another, or give examples of what's happened in a previous deal cycle with another salesperson that they were working with, and kind of having that wider breadth or scope, because they get to, do a lot of different things across a lot of different opportunities. So I think it really lends itself to just better partnership and better outcomes, both internally and externally. But I'm biased because, solutions engineering is the best job in the world. So take it or leave it.
Do you recommend, or I guess do you see often where solutions engineers are proactively putting themselves in the process, or it's the other way around where AEs are reaching out to involve them?
So at Ashby, AEs are technical. I was telling Leigh this the other day, and I was talking to an AE who, he's been here for 4 years. He knows the product really well, and he doesn't always ask for SE to be in his deal. He's kind of like, I got it. Like, I know how to run this. I'm a top performer. It's all gravy. And I was kind of like, what is the benefit for you? Like, why would you bring SE into a deal if you can effectively run it yourself? And I completely agree with his sentiment, is that sometimes salespeople, even if they are technical and smart, are just seen as salespeople. And at the end of the day, people don't like being sold to. I'm going through a tool evaluation right now, and talking to salespeople, is making me cringe, because I'm like, just show me the product. Like, this is my evaluation criteria. I need a tool that meets my evaluation criteria. So again, like having that other persona who just comes off as, I'm here to solve your problems, and I really want to understand what you're going through. I'm not here to sell you anything, can just be a huge strategy for them. So I think varying degrees of people who use SE support at different times in the sales cycle, we are trying to nail it down, but AEs are capable. And I think that comes with its own set of internal selling for the benefits of having an SE, and applying team selling to all of your opportunities, so that way they can spend time on things that they're responsible for, like prospecting, and my team can spend things on time that they're responsible for, like creating really customized demo experiences.
I will say, Katie, to your question on like if SEs are proactive, I saw that happen a bit at HubSpot, where I can't remember, we flipped like some SLA, but essentially what the result was is reps were getting slacks from SEs being like, hey, I saw you got this deal. Like, what's going on? You haven't like looped in an SE yet. And I think what I learned in that was, I think the more, I suppose the word is humble, but maybe it's a different word, like the more humble a rep can be on just not being protective or like feeling as though they need to know everything. Like in those instances, there were very like early stage deals, and reps were very cagey with like, well, I'm not sure yet. Like, I don't know what I need help from you on, or if I need you yet. And so I think, like, again, the more humility that's there around like, sure, why not? Like, I might not know everything, or you might poke holes and this might be a disastrous deal. I'm not sure, but I won't take that personally. Like, please come in here and like take a look under the covers and tell me like what I'm missing. So I think that's like necessary, I suppose. And I think, proactiveness from the SE org is like more than welcome. I think sometimes it's met with like a little bit of like anxiety, perhaps like veiled anxiety almost, on maybe not knowing the deal as well as a rep should or something.
Mm-hmm. That's helpful to understand. Alex, we spoke about win-win scenarios and how aligning goals across sales, CS, and contract management helps reinforce collaboration. How does this look in actual practice?
So, it's very important to have for everyone to kind of be working towards either very similar, if not the same goals. So that way you're not working against each other, right? So I think it's essentially a lot of what we're doing is making sure we're getting ahead of potential friction. Like even myself and Leigh and just the sales and CS orgs in general are working towards making sure we have the right swim lanes as we scale and grow, so that we know when to partner. Kind of similar concept to when to bring in an SE versus when, like, proactive, reactive, and making sure that we have clear understanding of when an AE should be brought into a conversation, so that we're both being like protective of their time, that we're bringing qualified leads, right? That we're making very good use of everyone's talents and time in that sense. So if your metrics are also like designed around that harmonious relationship between these teams, then it makes it much easier. So like for a real example of like, if you have a like renewal management team or contract management team that is only measured based on expansion or revenue retention, like that's in the positive, then you're missing out on this big piece of churn that's really, really important to the rest of the customer success organization. If you're not being measured on that, then you end up having eventually this team that has either less incentive, or I like to just say like less skin in the game on really providing strong save strategies and partnering with the customer success organization to keep these customers on, to figure out what might be going wrong and if we can continue them on forward. On the flip side too, if you have conflicting metrics with a sales team and a contract management team, then you have people almost fighting over deals, and that is not where you want to be either. It wants to be like, we are working towards the exact same goal, so we are incentivized to be partnering together like correctly, and I said it again, or said it before, but harmoniously, right? So that's why it's so important to have those same metrics. I mean, we want to be making sure that we're moving the business forward together as one team versus all trying to solve for ourselves. So I think that's like where it's really important to making sure that all of these teams are working towards the same goals, which is, I think, easier to do, or it's been easier to do as we've been a like growing business, and it will become even more paramount as we get bigger to make sure that it's very clear and straightforward as to where ownership lies and how we're incentivized, and making sure that all of that is aligned across the different teams.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. That was good info to have across the board. And we do have a couple questions that have been submitted, so keep thinking of those. We'll get to audience Q&A in just a second after we get through this last question. And this one is for all of you to round us out here. When you think about the colleagues that you enjoy collaborating with most, what makes them stand out in your mind? And Jessica, we can start with you. Or Alex, you seemed excited about that one.
No, go.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the colleagues that I like working with most are just those who are open to different perspectives. You know, everyone brings something different into a working relationship, and it's really important to like respect other people's perspectives and be open to the things that they, want to do, or the opinions that they have, because I think that that builds trust, and I think trust is really important, especially when you are working with people so closely on things that are intertwined. We were talking about like the Asana list, or the list of priorities that Leigh's got going on. There must be 5 owners across each one of those, because they're such big cross-functional things that we have going on, and they're really large projects. So we all bring a lot of energy into the conversation, and the openness to just, respect each other and have fun while we're doing it, which I think that you can see from these conversations is that like we laugh a lot. And I think that, is something that I really look for in colleagues that I'm working with, is just somebody that I'm able to have fun with as well.
I look for those that wear bucket hats or other good headwear.
Infamous.
I maybe coming at it from like a little bit of a different angle, but I think as a second line leader, not a lot of times, but sometimes some of the collaboration I have with other departments like CS or marketing might come from like escalation path related, or like feedback related. And so I think from that angle, I think enjoy working with those who start from a place of always like seeking to understand, when we're having any sort of like conflict or escalations, I suppose, like pop up. Just like a willingness and openness to want to understand like what's going on, what's the situation. It's very easy to like jump towards defending your team or like trying to understand why there's friction between teams. But as Alex said earlier, like we're all in this to solve for Ashby customers and help businesses grow and make the best hires. And so kind of working with leaders and folks in other departments that just take a step back first and seek to understand is something I really appreciate and enjoy.
Yeah. And I think to just a final thing to add to, there's a lot of mutual respect for one another within the business. Like we've alluded a lot to how important hiring is at Ashby, and just the bar of excellence that we have is quite high. But it's because you're bringing these very intentional folks together who are all highly driven, very motivated to do well, and to do well quickly, like not in the sense of urgency of I need this now, but the sense of urgency of let's get right to this. Let's be very direct. Let's be very blunt with what we're trying to achieve. And there is an openness to debate pretty frequently. So it's really actually a fun place to collaborate, because you get to like state your opinion, especially like, right, we're talking about women in sales, and you get to state what your opinion is. You get to have it heard. You get to be able to debate and have very productive conversations. And yeah, to Jess's point, like we have fun with it too. You have a lot of like tying it all the way back to the beginning with like our social channel and Ashby Love, like we're helping people hire, we're helping people get promotions in their jobs. It's like a very joyful like software experience. I think we all can all appreciate that. We've worked for places before where like this doesn't really resonate with me. At one point in my career, I worked at like for a business card company, print media. Am I right? Like now, just like in being in a SaaS environment where like you can really feel connected and you know like everyone has applied for a job before, right? Like these are things that we're doing and we can relate to it so well, and we see the joy that it brings the customers, and that helps move you forward in what your role is specifically and helps you collaborate well across the team. So we have a good time.
I think that's great advice also for anyone who's going through the interview process currently somewhere or plans to maybe at the beginning of 2026 is being able to connect to the product is a good way to ask questions in that process to really understand if it's something you're going to get excited about and motivated to sell. So glad that y'all all feel that at Ashby. A couple questions that have come through, and y'all have a few more minutes to submit any if anything comes to mind. I'm 4 weeks into my new job and have noticed some visibility / documentation gaps in the org. Y'all's favorite, we're going to talk about documentation. How can I encourage the rest of the org to share more of their decks, resources without ruffling feathers as a new person?
Okay, to be entirely fair, I think some of this comes from our global head of sales, Mike Clapson, who quite literally just like works by documenting. But what's really interesting about like anytime he's my boss, when we have conversations, he's like, let me take this away. I need to write about this for a minute. And he'll then spin up an entire document. This is also part of Ashby's operating principles around thoughtful communication. Like we're not about unnecessary meetings or about like really thoughtful work and like long form communication. So I'm trying to think of like an actual way to answer this question that's helpful, because I think I guess what I'm getting at is a lot of this is like foundationally to like how Ashby operates and like what our culture is that was set up from the start by our co-founders in the sense of thoughtful communication. I think maybe starting from like the why or the impact in terms of the request. The why at I mean, not the why at Ashby, but like one of the most helpful things with the documentation is to ensure that you don't have unnecessary meetings, that you're not like chasing your tail answering the same things over and over again. So if you explain it more from that perspective of like perhaps why you're asking or what the impact to if we do not share more, that might encourage sharing perhaps. There's also probably a little bit of a nuance between the difference in documentation that a lot of what we're talking about is documentation or like processes or why we think or how we think about things, which helps a lot with onboarding, sharing like templates, things like that. That might just be more focused on almost like collaboration more so than documentation or like a necessary documentation issue, something like that. But I don't know. I'll let Jess and Alex chime in.
Yeah, I've worked somewhere before where a lot of knowledge was tribal knowledge and it did not have the level of documentation that Ashby did. So I think the best thing that you could do is just, yeah, the conversation with your manager around visibility and maybe resources that you think are missing. So I always say to the people who work for me, like, come to the table with solutions, not problems. So, hey, I've noticed that like some of this documentation is missing. You know, I'm going through this right now. Like, I'd love to take a stab at potentially like writing some of the documentation or like finding the person who's responsible for this and like collaborating with them on working on that documentation. So that way you don't have any gaps. And I think coming to the table in that way just, obviously provides more value than saying like, I can't learn anything because I can't find this anywhere. So yeah, just coming with a perspective, a list of things that are missing, and then a potential solution to getting those filled in and creating the culture of documenting things through that process.
And one final thing, you can be observing. I feel like a lot of ways that we can learn at Ashby too, outside of just our long form reading too, is just observing what's going on. So if you see someone who closes a deal or creates a process, ask them more about it. How did you do this? How did you like ask them specific questions, right? We all really enjoy talking about ourselves generally and speaking. And so compliment someone and be like, I really enjoyed how you put this process doc together. Can you tell me a little bit more about who you had to collaborate with or how you found this information, and start to like dig in a little bit more as to where this is coming from, to then kind of go along with what Jess and Leigh were saying and build that process out.
Great tips. Last question here. all three of you, whether it was your most recent role before Ashby or one before that, had fairly long tenures. So how did you know it was time to move on from that? And then what excited you initially about Ashby?
I'll start. I was actually pulled away. I was quite comfortable at HubSpot. I was happy with what I was doing. Kelsey, who I had mentioned to before, Kelsey Peterson, who's our VP of Customer Success, was a person that I really respected and enjoyed working for a long time, and we had kept in touch like outside of HubSpot as friends as well. And so when she had reached out to me, I think she was like, "I have a pitch for you. Can we chat?" And it really took like some selling, right? Ashby was still a young company. I was happy where I was, but just in chatting with Benji, our CEO, and learning more about Ashby's mission and what they were setting out to do, especially the operating principles. I think one thing that's unique about Ashby specifically is that it takes a lot of the pieces that the folks that are here like really wanted in their work environments and like operationalized it. So like thoughtful communication's been brought up, and just almost like cuts out some of the fluff things that maybe we were, not wanting to have to deal with anymore at companies that had just grown to be very big size, right? There's also a luxury of being in a startup setting where you get to make a really strong impact. So there was a lot of things for me that were just really exciting. The opportunity to build an organization from the ground up at a company as well that I felt like I would blend in with. It was obviously like a risk in the sense of leaving a place where I was comfortable and doing well. But here I am almost 2.5 years later, and I'm like, could not be more delighted fully. And I have my Ashby water bottle. I'm like surprised I'm not wearing purple at the moment, but that's me.
Yeah, I think my big thing about being at any company is that I'm constantly learning something new or growing in some way, a skill set, trying something that I've never tried before, constantly being challenged to do something. And, when you spend 10 years at a place, when I started at Yext, they were a startup as well. I think I was on 5 or 6 different teams, before finding solutions engineering as a home and continuing to get skills in management and then verticalize and kind of keep doing the things that I love doing. So I do think that if you are somewhere for a long time and like Alex, you're happy, you're being challenged, right? You continue to grow, that there may not be a reason to leave. But once you feel like you've hit that ceiling potentially, then that's when, I think you naturally have the itch on your shoulder to potentially go looking for other roles. I think I'm unique in the sense that like I just applied to Ashby. Nobody recruited me. I wasn't an outreach in a sequence, which is a very big Ashby thing. Like you join and you find that we used an AI token to get you in and it felt personal, but it wasn't. It was just like our software being really good. I did not have that experience. I found Ashby. I had been playing around with HR tech for a while, interested in, the Workdays and the Ripplings of the world. And once I got into their process, as part of it, you have to demo the platform, obviously in a technical role, in many of the roles at Ashby actually. And I was like, wow, this software is fire. Like it is so good. And being able to sell something to the point that we made earlier that like works really well, that customers find value in, and that you think like honestly has a place in the market, I think is really important technical fit wise. And then every person I talked to throughout the sales cycle, throughout the interview cycle could have been my best
Same
friend.
thing.
Yeah, same thing. From the recruiter to the hiring manager to everybody in between. And I just knew that it was a place that I wanted to be.
Mine was slightly different. I was at HubSpot for almost 13 years. So I kind of grew up at HubSpot. I had one role before HubSpot. Similar to Jess, like my framework was always, I don't know why it's always 3. And I'm, as you can tell, a very like process driven person, but my thing was always, am I making money? Am I having fun? And am I learning? And every point in time, like I had hit many times throughout those 13 years of like maybe frustration or feeling like I want a different role or a different company, but I always kind of kept back coming to, am I making money? Am I having fun? And am I learning? And I think I sort of just reached the point where I started at HubSpot, I was employee 300 something and left when HubSpot was 9,000 employees. And so I think I just reached the point where I felt like I wanted to go back to a smaller company where I could have more impact and where I'd seen the movie before, so to speak, and could apply it and add value to a smaller company. The reason I'm at Ashby is also because of Kelsey, though. My plan was slightly different, though. She didn't poach me. I was going to take a break for a 6-month break, move to North Carolina. And sure enough, Kelsey gets in my inbox and gets in my ear. And one of our operating principles, since we keep talking about some of them, but haven't named this one, is to be frustratingly patient with hiring, which is what got me, because I was like, I'm taking a break. And Kelsey said, that's fine, because we will be patient if you are the right person. I went through the process and took a couple months off. And so being frustratingly patient with hiring is also one of Ashby's important principles.
I remember being delighted when Leigh was hired, but that I saw that her start date wasn't for a few months. I was like, thank God she's still taking her break in
Yeah.
between.
You needed to rest. 13
Yes.
years of monthly quotas.
Oh, that's incredible. We actually have another virtual event coming up in October about protecting your energy and creating boundaries. And so that's great example of that, Leigh. I'll have to reference that for the event. Thank y'all so much. This was such an incredible panel. I learned a lot specifically about Ashby, but also how you all collaborate and work together. And I know the audience got a lot out of it too. So thank you so much. Like I said earlier, we'll send a recap out tomorrow or Monday with some of the takeaways from today, a link to the Trust Triangle TED Talk, and then the hiring page for Ashby, which is also linked here. One thing I just wanted to note is that if you are based in New York, we have an in-person event coming up in October, hosted by one of our partners, AlphaSense. So I'm just going to drop that link in here. You can register for the event for free and save your spot there. But otherwise, check out womeninSalesEverywhere.com for any of our other virtual events or in-person things that we have going on. And thank you so much to the Ashby team. They are hiring, so check out their open roles. The last plug for it.
Yeah. And we're fun.
And you're fun. I don't think anyone would doubt that after today's panel. So thank you, thank you. All right, have a good one,
Thank you,
everyone.
Katie.
Put it
Thank you.
down sometimes. Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Bye, thanks.